Hello and welcome to Finch's Film Club podcast. My name is Rebecca Finch, and this is the podcast where we talk all things film and television and learn some new things about our favourite movies and TV shows. Now, today, I would like to issue an apology, first of all, because I did not upload a podcast last week, and I am sorry about that. I was just crazy busy. I didn't realise I'd be that busy at all. But I was, and I did try and record it, but it just kind of didn't go well at first. And I was like, okay, I'll just re-record it. I'll redo it. However, I did not have time for that, which is not fun. And I do apologize for anyone that was, for any reason, mega excited about the podcast. And I'm kind of annoyed as well because you guys all knew, if you'd listened to the end of the previous podcast about Alien, you guys all would have known what last week's episode should have been about. Now, this episode is actually a very special one. I didn't think I'd be making a podcast about this topic so early on, but it's happening for multiple reasons. Last week, it would have been on the exact day pretty much, but last week was the 30-year anniversary of the premiere of my favourite film, Jurassic Park. And you may be asking, why is that your favourite movie? Well, for me, Jurassic Park will always have a special place in my heart. Everyone has a film or TV show that they've loved for as long as they can remember, no matter how good or bad it is, and for me, that's Jurassic Park. When I was younger, I was obsessed with dinosaurs, and I kind of still am. All my birthday presents from my friends are dinosaur-related still, so the first time I saw this film, it must have literally changed my life or something. I've seen it so many times now, I can't remember the first time I saw it, and I'm fairly certain I can quote it from memory at this point. And I know I'm not the only person that thinks this film is special. It was hugely successful and extremely advanced for the time that it was released, and we've even got modern versions of the original trilogy in the form of Jurassic World, which I think are kind of unnecessary, and I'm not a huge fan of those. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about dinosaurs and the movie I will always love, and I'm going to tell you almost everything I know about it, and it's going to be great, so let's do it. There's some interesting stuff to cover in this episode, and I will revisit Jurassic Park in a future podcast, because, this is we've already established it's a very important film to me, and this is only episode 5, so of course I have to revisit it in the future. But let's get started with today's episode. Now, this movie, for those that are unaware, is actually based on a book by Michael Crichton, and so was the second movie, The Lost World, and I have read the book, not the second book, just the first one, and there were a lot of vast differences between the film and the novel. For example, certain personality traits of characters, the survival of some characters, and specific parts of the story. So even Tim and Lex are different ages in the book. They're swapped around in the film, so Tim is younger in the film, but in the book he's actually the oldest child. Some of your favourite characters from the movie might not even survive in the book, so for example, John Hammond and even Ian Malcolm actually dies. However, Ian Malcolm is brought back to life for the second book, because he was such a good character, they somehow found a way to make him live again. Because in his own words, life finds a way. But even in the book, Henry Wu dies, which I would not have been mad about if he had died in the film, because I'm really mad that they attempted a redemption arc for him in the most recent Jurassic World movie, which I have expressed I don't like those movies. But, not necessarily because they're bad or anything. I just think the Jurassic franchise will always be the 3 Jurassic Park movies, no matter how bad the sequels may be. I'm not saying they are bad, but you know what I mean. The first one is the best out of all of them, I think. So now you know a little bit more about the book, I kind of want to talk about the plot of the film in basic terms, because today I think we're going to be mostly discussing behind the scenes stuff, because of course it's the making of the film that really changed things, and I would like to kind of go into that as much as possible. But plot-wise and just basic info-wise, Jurassic Park is a science fiction adventure film released in 1993, directed by Steven Spielberg, and is based on the book by Michael Crichton, like we've already said. The movie was groundbreaking in terms of its visual effects, particularly the realistic portrayal of dinosaurs using a combination of animatronics and computer-generated imagery. Industrial Light and Magic, so that's ILM, was responsible for creating the film's visual effects, and Stan Winston Studio created the animatronic dinosaurs, while CGI was used for the more complex dynamic shots. So, for example, the iconic T-Rex attack scene where the dinosaur pushes the car over the edge of a cliff, which is a continuity issue, which we will talk about later. But that scene was achieved by combining a full-scale animatronic T-Rex with CGI enhancements. So the full-scale animatronic T-Rex, again, we will talk about that soon, but it was the huge robot. And then obviously when you see it running, for example, or doing complex things, that is CGI. So it was really a combination of both. To create the lifelike movement of animatronic dinosaurs, puppeteers and animators studied the behaviours of modern day animals such as elephants and birds to add authenticity to the creature movements and many other things. But now we're going to kind of take it back to the beginning a little bit about how the film really got into production. And Steven Spielberg had actually previously worked with Michael Crichton, the author, on bringing another project of his to life called Emergency Room, which was a book that was going to turn into a movie with Amblin Entertainment, which was Steven Spielberg's company, but it was unsuccessful. The book did become a TV show called ER eventually, but it was never a movie. Spielberg was actually a huge fan of dinosaurs in general, so he was super excited about the project because what he did after ER kind of didn't work out as a film. He asked Michael Crichton, what have you got going on book-wise right now? And then he told him about Jurassic Park, and he was immediately excited. So he definitely wanted to be involved in this because he was just a huge dinosaur fan. And of course, he wanted to portray them in a realistic way. And what I mean by realistic is obviously kind of, for the time, something that didn't look like crap, because in terms of visual effects, Jurassic Park was the first film to kind of do what it did. And that, again, is something I will expand on shortly. But he wanted, like we already know, to use animatronics for the dinosaurs. He was inspired by the King Kong ride at Universal. He said that you could see the detail and the muscles moving, and he wanted that for his dinosaurs. So he gave the project to Stan Winston, who we mentioned earlier, who worked on Aliens and created the xenomorphs from that movie and brought their queen to life, which was hugely impressive. He wanted that, but for at least 7 individual animals that could run, roar, move around realistically, all that kind of stuff. So it was a big job for him as well. And it may seem unrealistic to have a huge hydraulic dinosaur T-Rex robot, but they did do that. That is something that they did. They had to use the animatronic version in mostly obscured shots, kind of in case it was too robotic moving. But, you know, it worked very well. And the T-Rex head in the movie that you can see is a robot, but as we've already said, the shots where you can see the whole T-Rex like running around and stuff, that is CGI. And originally, instead of CGI, it was going to be stop motion by a guy named Phil Tippett, but it just didn't work because, of course, stop motion is still in each frame, so there's no movement between each frame. Like if you were walking in front of a camera, if you paused a video of yourself walking in front of a camera, there's going to be some blur there. Motion blur is what it's called, and you can tell that a person is real life, moving in real life. But the stop motion, even though it was really impressive, it was too stop motion, you know what I mean? So Phil Tippett, this guy, he had done work on Star Wars and other iconic movies, but Jurassic Park was kind of not the one for this kind of thing. So what they did was to kind of improve the stop motion that was already made. They hired a guy named Stephen Williams and Mark DePay, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. They were hired to add blur to the frames of the stop motion. So the stop motion, as we've already said, did not have motion blur in each frame. But they hired these guys to add motion blur to make it look more realistic, make it look less jerky. And it did look really good compared to the non-blurred frames. But they decided that they wanted to create a whole new T-Rex using computer graphics. So Stephen Williams and Mark DePay, they wanted to do this CGI T-Rex, which was very difficult at the time. And they were told by their bosses to stick with the stop motion and not even bother trying to make a new one. They did it anyway, of course. They said that they ambushed the producer of the movie. She wasn't, well, she liked it, obviously. I was going to say she wasn't happy. That's just not right. The bosses, of course, were not happy. That's what I meant to say. But she was super impressed because what they were doing is they invited the producer, Kathleen Kennedy, I think her name is, to have a look at something to do with the stop motion. And what they did was they had a CGI version of a T-Rex running, and they pointed the computer screen directly at the door as she walked into the room, and that was the first thing that she saw, and she was really impressed by it, and that is what she wanted to use in the film. So the stop motion guy, Phil Tippett, he was kind of almost out of a job for this, and he said that he felt extinct, but they did fit him into the production of the movie. So he is credited in the credits, of course, as the dinosaur supervisor, which I think is a cool job title. I mean, he basically helped the CG guys with the way the dinosaurs should be moving. So what they did was, when I said earlier that they studied the movements of like elephants and birds and all that, they had the whole team of like artists and animators or whatever. They had those guys running around like parking lots in the way that these birds would move or in the way that these dinosaurs would be supposed to move. And it helped them picture what they should be doing. It helped them imagine the things that they were actually supposed to be animating. And it actually, it did work. So they had the dinosaurs, and next, of course, they had to find actors to play members of the human cast. Everyone was immediately interested, so they were the first choice of Steven Spielberg. He wanted Richard Attenborough, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Sam Neill, who all said yes immediately. Well, Sam Neill wasn't immediate, but we will expand on that very soon. For Lex, he wanted someone who could deliver a really convincing scream of fear. So Ariana Richards was that someone. And I don't know where I heard this, but apparently whoever was watching the video of Ariana Richards screaming her head off, it was so convincing that it concerned someone else in the house. I think it was the casting director, or it might have been Steven Spielberg himself. Like, whoever this person was, their wife or husband or someone, thought it was a real child in danger. And that's the moment where they were like, this kid is going to be cast into this film. But like I said, it was an immediate yes from everyone else. But Sam Neill, he was like, Steven Spielberg plus dinosaurs is something that you don't say no to. However, there was meant to be an American accent to the character, but Sam Neill couldn't really do one very well. So Steven was like, just talk in your normal voice, And then later on, he asked Sam Neill to do a weird 50-50 New Zealand American accent. So for all these years, people have been thinking that this weird accent is just Sam's inability to do this accent, but it was actually on purpose. So he doesn't deserve this hate that he's getting for doing some weird mix between these two accents. It was on purpose. This was something that the director, Steven Spielberg, actually requested. So no more hate to Sam Neill for Alan Grant's weird accent, because it was actually on purpose. So one thing that I want to talk about now before I move on to starting filming, for example, other things along those lines, you can't talk about Jurassic Park without mentioning the soundtrack. Of course, composed by John Williams, I believe in February of that year. And we've done an episode on John Williams before. If you've not listened to that, I would recommend it, because we talk a little bit more in depth about themes from Steven Spielberg movies, because of course they work together on a very regular basis. The film's musical score was composed by John Williams, known for his work on Star Wars and Jaws and Close Encounters, everything, Superman, The Jurassic Park theme became instantly recognizable and is often associated with the awe and wonder of the dinosaurs. So it's supposed to convey a sense of fascination and the emotion of seeing the dinosaurs for the first time. The Journey to the Island theme is kind of like the main one you hear throughout the film. There are many variations of it, so it's not exactly the main theme from Jurassic Park, but Journey to the Island has multiple different variations. So what I mean by that is there is a scene where John Hammond is in a basement room with Ellie Sattler and Ian Malcolm. I was going to say Jeff Goldblum. I mean, it is Jeff Goldblum, but you know what I mean. And he's trying to direct Ellie Sattler to the power outlet? That's not right. To, get the power turned back on. And that's when she delivers the iconic line, "We can discuss sexism in survival situations when I get back," which was a big slay from Ellie Sattler. In the background of that scene, there's a more military kind of army version of the Journey to the Island theme, and there's a more celebratory, joyous one when Lex successfully locks the doors as the velociraptors are trying to get into the control room. So there's multiple different variations of the Journey to the Island theme, which is, I don't know if you would say that's more recognizable than the main theme from Jurassic Park. I think both of them are kind of equally recognizable if you really enjoy the film and you know the music from it. But of course, John Williams did a great job on that one. And Steven Spielberg, I don't know if he actually actively listened to the score while it was being composed, because at the time he was in where was he? Wherever they filmed Schindler's List. I don't know where he was. He was in a different country filming Schindler's List, which is of course a very different film from Jurassic Park. So he was kind of working day and night. Well, he was in Europe. I don't know where in Europe, but he was there filming Schindler's List. So I think he either just trusted John Williams to go for it because of how often they'd worked together in the past, or he was listening to it whenever he could. And I don't know if it was something that he listened to actively and approved every single song, but it was kind of, very difficult for him to work on both of those films at the same time. But with Jurassic Park, it was filmed in Hawaii, and it wasn't all filmed there, but most places where they're kind of on an island and you can see that it is in Hawaii. So the visitor center was there. It was actually unfinished due to budget reasons, so that's why there's like scaffolding in that scene. But it kind of added to the effect of the park being unfinished and as if the guests were the first people getting a real first look there. Also, the gates to Jurassic Park were built in Hawaii as well. They're originally kind of given a Disneyland vibe by the guy who was drawing them, and I believe his name is John Bell. I don't know if that's right or not because I've watched quite a few documentaries about the making of Jurassic Park, and the one where they kind of focused a lot on the design of the park was a Netflix series called Movies That Made Us. So if you have watched that before and you're hearing a lot of information that you've already heard there, then that would be why. But if you haven't watched it, then I would recommend it because they go into a lot of detail about other movies as well that are very famous. So Jurassic Park has an episode on that, and I think that's where I got the name John Bell from, and I don't know if that's right or not, but I'm fairly certain he was the guy that did kind of the art and set design for that kind of thing. But gates to Jurassic Park were originally Disneyland-ish, but Steven Spielberg said that he liked the look of the big gates from King Kong, and that's what they went for. They added some fire, big, huge wooden gates, like in the movie King Kong, and that is why Ian Malcolm says, for the first time they go through those gates in the cars, what they got in there, King Kong? That's why he says that when they drive through the gates for the first time. The first dinosaur that they actually see in the film, I would like to just talk about, is the Triceratops. So after I don't know if the cars are broken down at this point, or no, it's not, is it? Ellie Sattler just kind of gets out and they stop the cars because she is doing whatever she's doing and she wants to have a look at the Triceratops because it's sick. That one was a robot, so it was an actual thing that they could react to. So apparently it felt like there was a real living creature in front of them, which made it a more immersive experience, which in turn made it harder for the rest of the movie because there was nothing there. So when they see the brachiosaurs for the first time or they look into the raptor pen, they are looking at nothing, of course. So they asked Steven Spielberg to make some noise or something. He did that. So I don't think they included the actual sounds in the movie, but Steven Spielberg held like a plastic bag or something to his mouth and made some weird noise into it so that they could react as if the noise was coming out of the raptor pen, because acting is reacting, and it would have been a lot more helpful if they actually had something to react to, which is why the Triceratops scene is so wonderful to watch, I guess you could say. Steven Spielberg he's also really good at action aspects, and I don't mean action movies, I mean actual things that the characters do. So when Grant takes off his glasses when seeing the dinosaurs for the first time, it's not something that you'd really do, but Spielberg instructs the actors to do little things like that so that there's a more immersive experience for the audience as well. Another thing about animatronic dinosaurs in this film, the Dilophosaur in the movie, aka the Spitter, that's what it was referred to by the crew, because of course it spat venom which killed Dennis Nedry, was the most kind of fictionalized dinosaur in the production. It didn't actually spit venom, and it was really around 10 foot tall. The puppet for this dinosaur had 3 interchangeable heads, so one which was in the usual position without the flare on its neck. Then there was the one which allowed the cowl flare to open, and then the third activated the spitting mechanism with the cowl flare open as well. This one also didn't have support from the CGI team, so it was just fully a puppet. So whoever was in charge of that puppet had to stand there in the mud with the wet flooring and everything and operate the puppet as they were telling him to. So they were giving him instructions on how to operate the Dilophosaurus, but he couldn't hear because he was fully kind of in control of the puppet and he could not hear the instructions. So they had to do a lot of different takes, and I guess he just kind of had to go with it. So that's how that's what they did for that dinosaur. And also there's just a lot of creative things that they did. So for the iconic moment, when the glass of water in the car ripples because of the T-Rex approach, they used a guitar string under the dashboard of the car to make that happen. So that it was under the dashboard, they plucked the string, and that's what made the water ripple in the way that it did. And that scene was actually not filmed in Hawaii, and I will tell you where that was filmed shortly. But when wrapping up filming in Hawaii, there was a hurricane, just like in the story of the movie. And Sam Neill recalls going to the beach with Laura and Jeff, and Laura asked, "Are we going to die today?" Because the beach looked like the end of the world was coming or something. But Spielberg was eager to get some shots of the storm to be used in the movie. So the production team obviously faced numerous challenges with this, including these weather conditions, technical difficulties with the animatronics, and tight shooting schedules and everything like that. It had to fit all of this in because Steven Spielberg was going off to film Schindler's List, like I've already said. But they came up with all these unique techniques, and it just had it worked. It was visually stunning, as many people say, because even with the storm picking up super dangerously and literally destroying everything, It had 150-mile-an-hour winds. It was literally just such a bad hurricane as portrayed in the film, but this was obviously real life. And Steven Spielberg went out and filmed the storm so that they could use it in the movie. So I guess it kind of worked out for them in that sense. But other than that, I don't know, I guess it must have just been a really difficult, traumatic experience. However, they did make it back to America safely, where they could film the rest of the film in LA on the Universal backlot with scenes like the raptor attack in the kitchen, where they use people in raptor suits, and of course, visual effects. The raptors in the movie don't actually look like what velociraptors would have looked like in real life. I mean, of course, none of the dinosaurs are fully accurate, obviously, but it is a movie from 1993, and we didn't have the technology or discoveries in paleontology to confirm what they would look like. However, in 1993, the year Jurassic Park was released, the Utah raptor was discovered in real life. This is a real dinosaur that was discovered. I don't know where I found this out. I just, over the years, have accumulated so much information about Jurassic Park and dinosaurs in general. I have no idea where I found this out, but these kind of made the velociraptors in the film seem more valid because they had an actual dinosaur to compare it to. The raptors in the movie were massive in comparison to real life, so they were being referred to by dinosaur professionals as Spielberg's giant raptors. And in the Jurassic Park book, they resemble a Deinonychus, which is another species of dinosaur. So Spielberg's velociraptors were not technically velociraptors at all. Then the Utah raptor came along and almost justified the raptors that he'd created for the film. The only reason the ones in the movie were called velociraptors was simply because it sounded better, but in reality they were a lot closer to what Utah raptors would have looked like. So Steven Spielberg was probably getting a lot of criticism from people in paleontology or people who were dinosaur experts for the way that he presented velociraptors, because that's just not what they were. But with the discovery of the Utah raptor, he could argue and be like, well, I guess it's just more like a Utah raptor then. So he was accidentally justified by a completely new discovery of a different dinosaur. Again, talking about dinosaurs, the T-Rex escape scene was of course filmed in the rain, but the skin on the T-Rex robot, it was almost like a huge sponge, so they weren't allowed to get it wet, but it's obviously impossible to do that when filming in the conditions that the scene was in. Heavy rain, huge storm, you know how it is. So the skin soaked up all of the water and became immensely heavier, which led to malfunctions as the T-Rex it would shake in the rain as if it was shivering from the cold, because that caused problems with the movements. Whenever you would move the T-Rex's head, it would completely shake and they wouldn't really have any control over that. So that was a huge problem. And due to the rain and other kind of factors, the T-Rex actually expanded. The model of the T-Rex, it got fat pretty much. And to kind of keep with continuity of everything, the CGI team had to make their version of the T-Rex, the computer-generated T-Rex, had to suddenly become fatter as well. Not suddenly, but I guess they had to just kind of fit that in and make it look more like it was one T-Rex instead of having two different T-Rexes, kind of make it fit with the rest of the film. Another thing with the T-Rex, by the way, this is just kind of a personal thing that I noticed. In the film, they say that it can't see you if you stand still, which is not correct. I was going to say dinosaurically, but I don't think that's a word. The reason they say that is because in the book, they specify a lot more clearly that the frog DNA that they use is taken from a specific species of frog that has poor vision and can only see moving objects. So they don't say that in the film, but they do in the book. So when they're standing there, hiding up against the car, I say hiding, but sitting there really still up against the car with Alan Grant covering Lex's mouth to stop her from screaming in terrifying fear. He's like, don't move, it can't see if you don't move. In the book, that would have made a lot more sense because they clarify that the DNA is taken from frogs that can't see if you're not moving. But they don't say that in the film, so everyone kind of automatically assumes it was just a fact that they got wrong. But in the book, it kind of clears it up a little bit more. Also, the roars of the dinosaurs are not accurate either. Of course, I don't know if anyone's seen the CG examples of dinosaur calls, but they're really creepy. So it would have been like a low rumbling sound in the middle of a dark forest, terrifying to hear. And one that a lot of people are apparently freaked out by is the sound that the Spinosaurus apparently made. So that dinosaur is not in Jurassic Park 1, it's in the third movie, which is of course notoriously not good. I mean, some people say it's better than the second, but I think the second movie is definitely better than the third. But that dinosaur is scary for me because it's underwater and I hate that, But anyways, the T-Rex sound in the film is a mix of sounds from a crocodile, a lion, and a baby elephant, and the raptor sounds were a mix of a walrus and specifically a male dolphin, which is interesting. Now, I did just talk about a difference between the book and the film, and I do kind of want to go a little bit further into that right now. Like I said, kind of in the beginning of this episode, the character arcs in the novel are are very different in the book than they are in the film. So they undergo a lot more complex character development and have distinct personality traits in the book. So, for instance, Dr. Alan Grant, he dislikes children at the beginning of the book, but eventually grows fond of them. And this character arc is not as prominent in the movie. Of course, he is stuck with the kids and does like kind of become friends with them a little bit, but it's not exactly something that's a huge deal. And Ian Malcolm's fate, of course, like I mentioned, he dies after a T-Rex attack in the book. However, due to his popularity, the filmmakers kept him alive in the movie, and he becomes a central character in the sequels. But he doesn't die in a T-Rex attack. He doesn't die in the first T-Rex attack because he can't. Oh, I don't know. I read this book last year. I think he does stick around for like a large portion of the novel. So his death is not like as early in the film as the T-Rex attack in the film. You know what I mean? John Hammond's character dies as well. Like I said, the creator of Jurassic Park is portrayed as a more sympathetic character in the movie, but he's very much a psychopathic character in the film. He is depicted as a ruthless businessman who cares more about profits than safety, which is very true. He's more of a psychopath, and it makes you dislike him, you know? He's kind of dislikable in the movie as well, in a sense that, like, why is he so stupid? Why is he letting all this happen? But in the book, it is a lot more like, oh my god, I hate this guy. He dies because I'm pretty sure he, like, falls down some, like, ledge or something, some hill, and then compies attack him. What is the actual name of compies? It's like Procompsognathus or something. I don't know how to say it. And another thing that I love, actually, back to Ian Malcolm quickly, in the book, chaos theory. The concept of chaos theory, explained by Ian Malcolm, is more extensively explored in the novel. It's like huge pages filled with his like speeches about chaos theory and other reasons why Jurassic Park is destined to fail and destined to hurt and kill people. The movie obviously touches on it, but not to the same degree as in the book, because in the book it's crazy. It's like every other page he's talking about chaos theory really extensively, and I think it's super interesting to read that. Earlier we talked about the Dilophosaurus as well. As I said, in the film it is more fictionalized or differentiated from the one in the book, with the frill around its neck, you know, and it spits venom, making it a very memorable character within the film, but these traits are not present in the novel's depiction of the Dilophosaurus. This is not what happens in the book. The time frame as well. The events in the novel are kind of takes place over a longer period of time. It happens over a long period of time, you know, spanning over several days. In the film, timeline is kind of condensed, you know, you kind of get the feeling that happens within a couple of days maybe, but in the book it is a longer, more traumatic period of time. Also, I don't know if this one is true because I did read this book last year, but I did also write down that the relationship between Grant and Ellie in the book, they're in the book they're a couple, which I don't remember that happening. I don't remember them being an actual couple in the book, but in the movie their relationship is just professional with no romantic involvement. Maybe that did happen in the book, but I'm just so obsessed with the film that I just think of the film version whenever this comes to mind. I don't know. And the ending is crazy, right? In the book, there are velociraptors that actually get onto the ship. Escaped velociraptors get onto the ship that leaves the dock before the storm comes in. And these velociraptors make it onto the mainland. They can see them off of the island with like a pair of binoculars. They can see these velociraptors going on this boat and attacking a bunch of the people on this boat, killing everyone on there. The velociraptors make it to the mainland and escape just out into the world, which I guess you could connect to the events of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which was a shit movie. It sucked. I hate that film. But, you know, that does happen. And it doesn't happen in the film. But there are just velociraptors out in the mainland now, not even on the island. But that does not happen in the film. The original ending of the movie actually didn't even have the T-Rex saving the day and attacking the raptors. So Spielberg had to write a new end sequence because he wanted the audience to be able to see the Rex once again, as he stated that it's the hero of the film. Because the original last time you were supposed to see the T-Rex was when it eats a Gallimimus out after they're running through this field. that's the last time you see the T-Rex in the original ending of the film, which is crazy because, like, imagine that just being the last time. What would the ending even have been if you didn't have the T-Rex at the end with the banner falling down saying when dinosaurs ruled the earth, which, by the way, is a very satisfying way to end the film. And I just adore the fact that even if I'm not a huge fan of the Jurassic World movies, every single film in the Jurassic franchise has a T-Rex roar at the end of the film. And I just love that. That's honestly like one thing that I just really like about them. But like we've said, back to what I was saying before, after filming wrapped, Steven Spielberg, I've said his name so much, this like I can't even say it anymore. Steven Spielberg had to go to Europe to film Schindler's List, and work wasn't even finished on Jurassic Park yet, so he was working constantly. It was like Jurassic Park at night, Schindler's List during the day, so it was like pretty heavy work for him. But it all paid off because the critics actually really liked this movie, but of course they didn't think it was perfect. They said that it left you wanting more after seeing the dinosaurs and that the plot was thin and had weak characters, kind of like what we said about Top Gun in a previous episode. I don't know if I fully agree with the weak characters thing. I think Ellie Sattler was a great character. Maybe I've just always been excited about the fact that there's a powerful female character who likes dinosaurs like I do. I don't know. But I understand if they had any negative thoughts about the comparison to the book, because it was a lot more gory and had a lot more of a horror aspect. But this was more of a family movie, I guess, because that's what Steven Spielberg is good at. So changes had to be made. And a lot of people still ask for a mature, like, bloody version of this film. So I don't know if we'll ever get that. There's also quite a few, like, continuity errors as well, like I said before. So when the car falls down the side of the T-Rex paddock, it does not really make sense because earlier in the film, you can see them using the goat to try and attract the Tyrannosaur, which doesn't make sense if the other side of the wall is just a huge drop. Like, I don't know if this one, like, I don't know how that works because you can actually see Ellie Sattler when she finds the car, when she's out looking for Grant and the kids. You can see Ellie Sattler just casually walk down there and not have to face this huge drop when she's looking for the car. Like, I don't know how that worked out. But another thing that I don't know if this one is a continuity error or not, but this one just kind of bothers me. And I commented on Jurassic World's Instagram post about this the other day, and people seemed pretty mad at me. Not mad, but they had some points that kind of flew over their heads, I guess, when they were trying to come back to me about what I said. But Lex, in the film, very clearly states that she's a vegetarian. And then later on, she's eating jelly, which has gelatin made from animal bones. And, like, I get the fact that maybe she was just so hungry she was eating whatever she could because it's a survival situation. Or, you know, maybe it was vegetarian jelly. Or maybe it was just a mistake. And I guess, you know, iconic scene either way, the spoon shaking as she sees the raptor shadow. But still, you know, I mean, if it's very clearly stated that she's a vegetarian, she could have had literally any other meal in the world, but they chose to show her eating jelly. And I guess maybe it can be made, like, as a statement to show that she was in a survival situation and she'll eat literally whatever she can. But, you know, it's just something that I've always thought about. But of course, that did not change the fact that this film was literally life-changing. So after opening weekend, they earned almost $1 billion, which surpassed E.T., becoming the highest grossing film ever made at the time. They won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. They won so many awards, but of course the Oscar is notable. And the sound team actually won an Oscar too for their work on the sound of the dinosaurs. This movie changed visual effects forever, you know, because before this point, they never really had anything computer generated in the way that the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park were computer generated. So yeah, you know, it changed visual effects forever and it made huge waves in the industry and it totally changed the world of filmmaking. As we mentioned earlier, a guy named Mark DePay was involved in that, and he said, after Jurassic Park, digital filmmaking was just filmmaking. So Jurassic Park made it normal, made it what we do today pretty much. And this movie spent more on marketing, I think, than they did on the actual production of the movie, because the marketing was so good, because at the time in the 90s, there was like a dinosaur craze happening, and Jurassic Park kind of happened at the peak of this craze. So it wasn't like a trend that was dying out. They released Jurassic Park at literally the perfect time. The queues outside the theatres were insane, to the point where other studios were not showing their movies because they knew everyone would just be watching Jurassic Park. People love the movie, people love dinosaurs, and that's why it remains one of the most iconic films ever. And we got a whole franchise out of it, and then even more in the form of Jurassic World, which we've already established that I personally am not a huge fan of those ones, but you know, whatever, we can go past that for now. Jurassic Park is filled with legendary quotes and moments that are so memorable. If you haven't seen it, I really think you should watch it. And it's not the best film in the world, of course it's not. There are better ones out there, but it's remained my favourite since the first time I ever saw it. And it's literally so important to me that I've had it tattooed on my arm. It's just the best, in my opinion. I just really love it. It's just, it's such a good film. And I really am surprised if you haven't seen it, because obviously Jurassic World is still extremely relevant today. And a lot of people have seen Jurassic World. If you have seen Jurassic World and not Jurassic Park, I mean, come on, you're like, what are you even doing? Let's be real. Like, you gotta watch Jurassic Park. It's got something special about it, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it, just like I'm sure you've enjoyed this episode of Finch's Film Club podcast. Thank you very much for listening. And again, I apologize for the fact that there was no episode last week. And even on my social media pages, I haven't even been posting any clips from any previous podcast because I've literally been that busy. I haven't had time to do that kind of thing either. So I am very sorry about that for any, avid fans. But I will be back on it, I promise. And it did kind of annoy me as well that I didn't get to post this podcast about Jurassic Park when it was actually relevant, the 30-year anniversary being on the exact day that my podcast is released. Or at least the premiere would have been on the exact day, June 9th, 30 years ago. But unfortunately, that did not happen. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Finch's Film Club podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to rate this episode 5 stars if you enjoyed it, because that would be very, very nice of you to do. Also, do not forget to follow me on social media, Finch Film Club Pod on Instagram and TikTok, Finch's Film Club on YouTube, and also I do have my main YouTube channel where I post the video episodes of this podcast as well. However, this one is going to be a little bit different because there's not actually a proper video version of this podcast. There is still something to put on YouTube, but it's just not in the same layout as the other ones. I'm sure it will be fine for those of you watching it, because it will just be kind of set out more like a video essay rather than a video podcast, but it's all good. Make sure to subscribe to those channels, follow me on social media, all that, of course. And once again, thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.